if you want to experience or move with the great flow of the universe, you kind of need to change into the person that can do that.
We often get questions from listeners and viewers about terminology that they've heard, and it's, you know, where it fits into, I guess, what we're calling classical or traditional or the ancient Taoism. Could we call it that? I'm not sure.
I think the way the terms are working now, and here's the interesting thing. Once you've been at it for a few decades, what you find is that periodically the terms just change, and they start meaning something else, or people relabel something. That I think is part of the evolution of language.
Oh, that's true.
And you know, it's partly, it's also partly the speed of it is a social media thing. Because you know, before it was like it was restricted to print, and print changes slowly, whereas social media changes.
Oh, yeah. And literacy, like when it was only the written word, only a few people could read it. Now everybody can watch, you know, everybody's media literate, you know, as far as social media.
Yeah, so the term I think that's popping up for what I call old school Taoism, which is the Taoism I trained in, is from the esoteric traditions, which are the first traditions, largely unchanged by the influence of other religions or politics.
Okay.
And the mainstream Taoism is kind of a hybrid of the philosophical systems, so like the Tao Te Ching.
Okay. You see the Tao Te Ching as old school or later?
Well, you know, part of that is the time scale of Taoism. So the Tao Te Ching may or may not have been BC, but I don't consider it to be old school. Okay. Because I know all the extensive practices that came before it. And the Tao Te Ching came up as part of the philosophical tradition, which emerged with the Chinese scholar class. So the learned people that could read and write wanted a thing that they could gather around together that wasn't as rigorous as the esoterics. And
they could all agree on that, maybe.
Right. And so here's the manual. So the traditional way of studying the Tao Te Ching was that the scholars would get together, and so a scholar, they work for the government, they could read and write, they would translate, tabulate.
So we're talking Confucius times.
Yes. And so they could do all those things, but they would just get together by a stream, very specific, control of place.
Okay.
And drink and eat treats while they would sit back and just discuss the Tao Te Ching, or quote passages back and forth to one another, or quote poetry inspired by the Tao Te Ching. And so those were the typical methods of studying philosophical Taoism. And we sit back and kind of from the Puritan perspective that many Americans have and think, well, you know, why would they be sitting around drinking and blah, blah, blah? It's like, well, you don't know philosophers if you don't understand drinking.
Yeah, I mean, the Greeks are well known for following that same tradition.
Yeah. So that was the tradition of it. And then over time, as the religious element and ceremonial Taoism emerged, the Tao Te Ching started to become more of a holy text reference. But that's the influence of religions outside of Taoism upon Taoism that were textual traditions.
So and that was to bring it to the people?
Not really.
No, still we're not there yet.
I would, you know, temples emerge because they can provide services to a larger number of people, but it's also about power. You know, the argument behind text is, well, anybody can read the text. It's like, well, anybody can read the text so that they can ignore the massive amount of oral and physical training that goes with Taoist practice.
Because the written word is easier.
Yeah, well, and it also allows you effectively to steal power from the practitioners and make it say whatever you want.
A term that we hear a lot is Wu Wei. And what's its modern or current definition versus old school Taoism?
Wu Wei is an entire field of practice in old school Taoism. And the modern definition has started to use the word flow, which is you try to align yourself with the movement of the Tao and allow it to guide you, thereby removing you from direct responsibility for your own actions. You're caught up in the stream of the Tao. And the thing is, that may sound good, but actually, even within the philosophical tradition, that was debated as a value or not a value, all of which you can read if you want to go to the academic texts for centuries. And so,
you mean the discussion? You read about the discussion and the
whether or not
pros and cons?
The flow of it is actually what it blah 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 means. And my position comes from a practice position, meaning of physically engaging in the field of practice within that particular area. So there is something that would be called the flow, but it essentially means the feeling of connection and harmony among all things, even within changes of time and place. And so it starts to get, at that point, kind of Jedi Star Wars-ish.
Yeah, what does that mean, time and place?
It means exactly what it means. It's
again with the questions.
The esoteric component is that all moments of time exist simultaneously, which for some reason, I haven't really been following movies or current fiction, has turned out to be a really popular movie and fiction element. So, and believe it or not, 20 years ago, that was not the case. Like, to say that all moments in time existed simultaneously was this outrageous statement. Back when I was, well, the difference is that everything is existing simultaneously. Now that there have been a few movies out on it, people are like, oh yeah, that's obvious.
Yeah, it's like, not such
is it obvious?
It's not such a weird idea. Interesting. So we're catching up.
Well, yeah, we're asking questions. Entertaining possibilities through the use of fiction, which is a very vital role of fiction.
Yes, that's true. It always has been. You're right.
If a person wants a simple method for developing Wu Wei, that's a simple 4-step process which is outlined on the website and would take more time than we have.
Okay.
And so they could just visit that and go through those steps. A lot of times they'll be, well, this isn't going to be, it's like, actually it will. Very consistently produce the first step in the series of outcomes. If you want to experience or move with the great flow of the universe, you kind of need to change into the person that can do that. And
yeah, we've addressed that before. Huh?
Yeah. And if you are not changing into the person that you do that, what you get is a mechanic sitting under a sign, or a guy sitting under a sign that says mechanic, pretending to be a mechanic. And there are a lot of other things now which are called flow or flow state, which actually have absolutely nothing to do with Wu Wei. So it's a language game. The meaning of the terms have been bent and reassigned in order to change social status for most people. And certainly every human and everything that exists already exists within that flow. Whether or not they are aware of it is the question.
Oh, okay. So I see that distinction. I mean, we can't exist outside of the flow of the Tao, but our awareness of it is, that's our choice.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that it may not be something that you want to be, that you may not want to experience that. Why would that be?
Why would you want to experience it? That's the real question. Like, why would you want to? What's motivating it? What drives it?
Well,
if somebody
I can say many people probably don't, they feel like they're outside of, they want to be part of something bigger. They want to be part of something that has, that's better, that's natural, I guess. I don't know, now that you question it, now that you ask me about it.
I know, it's something to contemplate. And again, I don't have an answer for that particular thing. I'm asking the question of why.
Yeah.
Because the truth of it is if a person's motivation for walking down that path, if they don't understand it,
where are they going?
Yeah. Well, the other thing is they won't get there. That's the great frustration that most people have is like, are you chasing something because you heard a word? Is that what it boils down to? Are you chasing something because you heard a story? Now, some people, the story or that word is going to stimulate something in them, and they will go, yeah, absolutely. And then it becomes a quest for them to pursue that particular thing. If you're one of those people, I don't have to explain it to you.
Because they already know, they already feel it.
They already feel the pull, and that will be the driving force for them. Now, whether they are successful or unsuccessful, that I don't know. But without that pull, they're not really going to get there. Or they don't really want that thing.
But what's the thing? So when people say wu wei, they want to feel like they're part of a bigger truth.
Let's assume that they are being genuine. Okay.
Yeah, let's assume that.
Let's start off with that assumption. And I would ask the question of, well, why do they believe that experience even exists? And I don't, that's not a criticism.
No, it's an exploration, for sure.
A true question.
I think a lot of people feel, and I think everybody does sometimes, they feel separate and not part of something that's, bigger, or they're scared of death and they want to live life to its fullest and feeling. I mean, why do people take drugs? They want to feel something more than their mundane everyday life.
Well, I would say two things in response to that. First, a question. Can't they get that from interacting with other people? Second, a question. When they are using drugs to move outside of the mundane, is it because they feel restricted by what is being presented to them by the mundane?
Oh!
Okay, so those are two questions. I'm just going to let them sit there.
Okay.
What I've found in interacting with other people is if they ask that question and they're being authentic, truthful, it's because they've had an experience in a little bit of that already.
Oh!
They walked into it.
And they felt it. They were like, oh.
This is cool.
This is cool.
This is something I want more of.
And they don't know where to get it.
That is true. And here's the thing. It's not a trick.
What's not a trick? What do you mean?
If they really want consistency in that experience, the pathway is consistently laid out. And you start off by doing the first part of the pathway and seeing if you can complete it. If you do that for long enough, and you've already had those glimpses, the true glimpses of the Tao, just one part of the Tao, the flow is not all of the Tao, and you've had glimpses of it, then yes, you will naturally move in that direction because you and the Tao will essentially reach the agreement of, if you want to pursue this thing, I will open more doorways for you. That's not the responsibility of a teacher. It's certainly not my responsibility. And while, for example, the written methods on the website will get you on that path, that only comes from you interacting and then essentially getting a spiritual offer, which is the opportunity to grow in a particular direction. That pathway will be twisty and windy. It is helpful to have the vast reserve of Taoist esoteric knowledge, especially when you're doing something stupid. Because Taoism is created by humans, and it is a collection of human methodology, largely a collection of human mistakes, where we sit back and go, you know what, perhaps you shouldn't do that because it leads to these horrible things.
I went insane.
Yeah, and it's helpful to have that methodology available to you. However, before we even sit back and remotely think of that, I mean, can you do the first steps?
What's the first step?
Well, the first steps all have to do with, essentially what I tell people is, if you want it in a nutshell, shut up. Don't impose your mind upon the world anymore.
Oh.
So, and I can explain that in complex terminology, but even with all the complex theory, terminology, levels of success with it, that's useful for me. sitting back and looking at as a training process or the likelihood of producing a successful outcome for humans. But it's not useful for anybody on the pathway. Anybody on the pathway just needs to follow the simple steps and see if it's actually something that they want to do. What they start to find out is that, oh yeah, the flow and the interconnectedness works in a lot of different ways and is not about you being the center of the universe. So when we are there and we're trying to impose our mind upon the world, in whatever way we do that, what we're saying is we're more important. And we're more important than the universe, we're more important than this over here, we're more important than that over there.
And I know all the answers. You're basically saying, I don't want the answers because I already know what's best.
And that's how many times people want that flow experience to be fed to them. But the thing is, if you are truly following the Tao, what you find out is you are one very small thing in a very great universe.
Oof.
That doesn't make you less important because that small thing is still what? It's still the Tao.
Right.
Okay. It's hard to sit back and look at a pebble and go, this pebble and I are equal. But if you really want that flow, what you have to do is perhaps stop describing it as a pebble and simply let it be whatever it happens to be. And experience it.
That's it.
There you go. So it's not a set of tricks. And it involves many ways walking away from the perceptions that you have initially in order to gain those other perceptions. A lot of times people like to think of, well, I will be able to command the universe and step into the flow and be this or be that. It's
okay, like a superhero sort of image.
The thing is, perhaps to other humans, if you do achieve a significant amount of flow, you will look like that. To you, you become smaller.
The ultimate irony. Oh, that's great.
And so you start realizing, it's great if you look, let's take children and an adult. You can go to any kindergartner's class, so that's a class of the youngest educable people within the U.S. So we have a lot of non-U.S. listeners.
Like 4-year-olds, 2-year-olds?
I think it's 5 within the U.S.
Oh, okay.
You're going to look huge, right?
That's right, all powerful. Oh, that's true.
Huge, all powerful, all knowing, all these things.
You can lift heavy stuff, you can pick them up with one hand.
To you, however, you're just the guy walking in to a class of kids. You don't believe you have all those things because you know better. You know it's a big universe. There are people that are bigger than you.
Yep.
There are people that are more knowledgeable than you.
Yep.
There are people that, perhaps are more kind or more cruel or whatever it happens to be, the moral or emotional value of it.
Yeah.
But to the child, you're all powerful at that point. And that can be, that child at that time might go, oh, I want to totally be that. It's like you want to totally be small because that's what's going to happen if you step out into the great universe. And that is really what stops the vast majority of people, is the unwillingness to relinquish being the most important thing within the universe. And now the flip side of that is that if you're sitting there and abasing yourself and it's like, oh, I'm nothing, it's blah, 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 that's actually not accurate either. That is you imposing an image upon yourself that is incorrect.
Right.
And so once again, you will walk away from the greater flow. So you can't go in either one of those socially prescribed directions. Otherwise, everybody within the social spectrum would be flowing along, which would be fantastic, but does not occur. And because we live largely within the deception of the social mind.
So not diminishment, although sometimes that word is used, it's just putting yourself in perspective.
I can see you saying that, and that may sound like a slam. It's not. I can see you saying that. I can literally see it. So I would say it's an issue of accuracy. You don't get the magical flow without actually being highly accurate, seeing the things as they are. As soon as you open the doorway to accuracy, you also open the doorway to true wonder and true power. So there's other saying which kind of links to this, which I'll put it out there because sayings are essentially rules of thumb.
Okay.
And
yeah.
people can act on them.
Useful, yeah.
And that is, the truth is powerful, but it is not persuasive. And that is always the thing to keep in mind. So,
okay. Yes. It's like medicine. It's not a tasty dessert. I made my own saying.
Well, Wu Wei, the true Wu Wei is powerful, but the true Wu Wei is not persuasive. What is persuasive is the social concept of Wu Wei.
Oh, okay. I
The
want
truth.
that. Yeah.
The truth is, I mean, from the kindergarten perspective, is
Yes.
great power.
Yes.
You're able to, you open doorways to things that have been closed for many other people, and the other people will sit back and go, oh, that's, fantastic. It's like, actually, it's just another day,
Yeah.
It's the day within the true universe. And, for the right person, that's where they want to be. And that is the thing that they want to do. And if it is that right person, there aren't a lot of excuses for that right person. I mean, they're either going to make the decision to move ahead or they're not. They'll overcome obstacles or they won't.
Yeah.
And all of that comes from the Tao. The Tao will present opportunities to make those moves. You either take them or you set them down. It's not a success or a failure. It is literally just a choice to follow one path or to follow another path.
Ah, yes. We've seen that. We've all been there.
It's very easy to think of things in terms of success or failure, these
Yes.
very polar
Yes.
structures, but it doesn't actually represent the universe as it is.
Going back to nature, is there really success or failure in nature? I mean, if a tree grows in this direction or grows in that direction, there's no judgment. It's just, it grew that way.
Yeah, I would say yes.
So don't get caught up on terms, right?
I would say that's true. Don't get caught up in terms, but we have to keep in mind, most people treat terms as promises. And meaning that the reason the word exists is because this particular experience exists. But you have to understand, again, like what's motivating it, what's driving it, what will cause the interpretation to change, all those other elements. And those are questions you have to ask at your own time and pace. And because even to reach a conclusion of, sitting back, let's say, well, why are you pursuing this thing here? And really asking the question and really setting out to find the answer can be a dramatic internal journey to reach that understanding. So when I'm talking about the questions of this or that, to some people it will sound flippant, like I'm just going, do blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Which, interestingly enough, is a teaching approach. And it can also be accurate. But I'm not saying that. I'm saying answering a question or asking a question and then answering it can be a very long, transformative journey. And it's actually the journey that gets you closer to the thing that you were seeking, just not in the way that you thought it would be. And so one of the common themes of lessons from the Tao is you end up in a place you didn't expect to end up, in a way you didn't expect to get there. But then you look at it and go, yeah, that was the only path there. I didn't see it. Now I'll ask the question, well, why didn't you see it? And the answer is usually pretty straightforward. I didn't know enough to see the path. So
yeah,
when you don't know enough, you have to allow yourself to be guided.
And that starts with questioning.
Yeah.
So to wrap up this exploration of Wu Wei, besides the question, why would you want to be in touch with the flow of the Tao? What's another question that we can leave this session with?
With regards to
Wu Wei.
Wu Wei? I don't know, man.
That's not a question.
What within a person calls them to it?
Ooh, see? That's a good one.
And I would just leave it at that, because I mean, otherwise we're going to be walking around here quite a bit more.
Well, we'll be back. We'll be back. All right. Thank you for joining us on this walk.